So as a specialist in childhood cancer survivors and the care they need and get and the research related to this care, I see every day what the long-term complications of the treatments used to cure children with cancer are. And we know, the statistics show, a majority of children who survive cancer will have at least one long-term complication from their treatments, and many will have several or multiple late effects or long-term complications from their treatments. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about that, and we'll start with you, Ted. And if you could share with us what the long-term complications of your treatments are, how you deal with those, how others could help with dealing with those, family, friends, and then what are some of the late effects that are invisible to others, that people would never know or have any clue, but you're dealing with them as we speak. Go ahead.
So the long-term effects, when I think about them, there are certain ones that I was told about right away. High blood pressure is one of them, so I take medication for that every day. I always have tinnitus. I always have ringing in my ears, so conversations in crowded rooms or kind of outdoor spaces can be challenging. There's still some lingering peripheral neuropathy. I still have some issues with that, but that's gotten better with time. And so, but all those things are things that you wouldn't see if you just look at me. You can't tell if someone has high blood pressure, that they have neuropathy issues or those type of things that are there. The one that's impacted my life the most, I would say, is the one I didn't even think about having, which was the infertility process. When I moved away from going to routine checkups and CAT scans and got the T-shirt that said I was done with things, I put cancer away, and that was the end of it. So I didn't really think about it, and it wasn't an issue I had to deal with aside from taking blood pressure medications. So that's it. And so when my wife and I were ready to start a family, this was a big blow to us that I wasn't prepared for at all. And it felt similar to when I was diagnosed with cancer. I couldn't believe this was coming back and that the cancer was still having these lingering ripple effects that were down the line, everything that was down there too. And so similar to being diagnosed with cancer, the infertility diagnosis was this denial and anger and resentment, and had to go through the same feelings and emotions, only this time it's myself and my wife that were dealing with this type of issue that was there. And I think the biggest thing for families and friends to know about is just the fact that, we have a period of our time that was kind of our cancer treatment and our therapy, and people knew that you were going through that. And once you're done, kind of like what I did, you put it in your past. But there are these things that come up, these things that will kind of come out of nowhere sometimes that you don't expect to deal with. And those type of things can trigger those emotions and feelings that you had even back when you were first diagnosed. And you do need people to help you through that, because if you try to keep it by yourself, it's not going to work out well for you. But having family and friends who could just help you with those process or help you just talk about it is incredibly beneficial.
About the seizures that I had long ago, that's been one thing that started after the treatment. And then I needed medications, then I needed a lot of pills, and then comes the non-epileptic seizures, which is the ones I'm having now, which is making me, again, having seizures, but more controllable and stuff. And the meds are also trying to help with that.
What's it like taking pills every day like that? Are you used to it?
Now I am, since I'm used to taking like a lot of pills at once in the morning. And then in the afternoon, I just need to take 2. But then at the end, I need to take a little more than 2, but probably at least like 2 pills less than the morning one.
Was it hard ever, or do you remember in the beginning, was it hard to take so many pills?
At first, when I had to take a lot, it was somewhat hard. One time I had to take them all one at a time, and now I'm able to just get it in my mouth at once.
Sound like a pro now. Great. And tell us a little bit about the long-term complications or late effects that you've experienced and what has been helpful for you to overcome them and deal with them.
My knee replacement, femur replacement is not, completely permanent. I've had one follow-up surgery since to have some of the parts replaced and things, which is also a pretty hard surgery with a longer recovery time. I think I was out of work for about a month for it and kind of, again, started that process of learning to walk again and adjusting to it. And then I've had some hearing loss, which is mostly evident in large groups with a lot of background noise. Sometimes I have a hard time deciphering different sounds and things like that. And then I have some heart issues as well. That I'm followed by a cardiologist now, which I just started seeing him around the time that I became pregnant with my daughter. Infertility was always a fear of mine as well. That's something that was addressed when I started chemo, and they even talked about the process of saving eggs and things like that. But at that time I was so young and I didn't pursue that. And so when I finished treatment, that was always in the back of my mind is, will I be able to have babies, And my husband and I were blessed with a beautiful little girl 3 years ago. So we are very thankful. But the heart issues came up a lot during pregnancy. And I was followed very, very closely by a cardiologist. And my heart function decreased some. And as we're talking about wanting more kids, that's something that we really have to think about. So I've seen a couple other specialists, and I've been given the go-ahead to have more kids, but it's definitely something that is on our minds, and we had to weigh it. Do we want to try for another one, or are we happy with one? What are the risks, But we've been given the okay, so I'm thankful for that. I think the biggest thing for me is probably maybe anxiety, honestly. And that's something that is internal, of course, but just that worry of the future and, another diagnosis, or like I said earlier, diagnosis for my daughter or my family member.
I was going to ask you, when you had your daughter, that kind of invisible late effect, things like the anxious feelings, did that get amplified, or was it less so, or transferred to her? How hard was that process?
Yeah, for sure. It's no longer me that I have to worry about anymore. And I want to be around for her. And it definitely adds another dimension of I need to be here. And there was a point when she was about 1 that I went through some serious anxiety, and I really thought, what if something happens to me? What will she do? But working through that, but it's definitely a process of finding the right people to support you and talking to friends and family.
I think with this experience in general, I think our perspective has changed completely on how to deal with crises. And there are so many different things that could happen. And we've really just kind of taken a step back and just kind of tried to focus on now instead of worrying about everything that might be. Right now, we're just in the early stages of figuring out what damage has been done. So he will, on his next appointment, have an echocardiogram and EKG. Common for there to be heart problems afterwards. Some other common problems that I've heard with leukemia is developing diabetes because of the very long-term steroids that they take. Infertility is one that I've heard of, and we are also evaluating neuropsychology, but he's going to have some trouble with his executive functioning, and we don't know if that's a long-term thing or a short-term thing or what. So We just take it as it comes. I know secondary cancers can sometimes be a scare. It's a lot. It's a lot, and I think just our perspective has changed. And in the beginning, it was really hard to adjust to that because we really had to be in the now to do each day. Each day was so different with each therapy, and that's, I guess, how we take it.
When did late effects even come onto your radar? You know, as a parent and hearing things from the medical team, you know, was it something that you may have heard of, but just wasn't the right time in the beginning, or something that came onto your radar as you finished treatment? What did that?
You know, I think we discussed it really early on. I think once I realized that like this is happening, I just asked so many questions, and it was a conversation that happened on pretty early on. And there are a lot of peer support groups that I'm a part of, and we do talk about some of these issues that come up, and just very aware of what can happen. And I think, and I don't know if you guys experience this too, but we live life more purposefully, and our days are filled with more life than they were before diagnosis. Doing more things together, and
That's pretty special.
yeah.
Yeah, you got to refocus. And sometimes, like, I feel like I lose some of that because life gets busy. And you start making plans, and you start having like goals that you're going to work towards and get on there. And then you're reminded, oh yeah, like I should actually take time with my kids and my family and do these things that are more beneficial just to be and exist rather than drive towards this, other thing.
The parental experience is so different in many ways than the survivor experience I've seen, but both are journeys, like whether you're an adolescent or young adult and been cured for years and, it's out of sight, out of mind, and you're moving on to something, or the parent who might always have that fear or memory of something and waiting for the next shoe to drop. But for everyone, there's like this evolution or change across the journey, which is invisible. Even your doctors or your closest loved ones or families sometimes don't see that. But it's a very real part of the journey.
I got life insurance a number of years ago. And when my parents found out that I was applying for life insurance, I got probably 20 phone calls because they figured I must have had some kind of complication or the cancer came back. And I had to tell them, like, no, I'm just applying for life insurance as adults do. And this is just, the normal thing we're doing there, but it triggered for them, like that's a memory that kind of came back for them, that there's a panic and a worry and anxiety that, they still have too.
I was thinking about, just as we're talking, I was thinking about, I was diagnosed when I was 16 and finished chemo at 17, and now I'm 38. And so half of my life I've lived as a cancer survivor. And I think about, like, not to go down in the dumps, but I do think about a lot of the kids that don't survive. And I think about, what if I hadn't survived? This portion of my life wouldn't exist. My daughter wouldn't exist. I talk with my nieces and nephews about my experience, and they're like, I can't imagine not knowing you, Auntie. And I just am so thankful, but I'm also so sad for the kids that don't survive, because what could their life have been?
That's a big part about the research that needs to happen, is how to be a partner with a survivor and their family as these needs change over time across the lifespan of different phases of life. There still are opportunities to help and make a difference. And it's, of course, absolutely critical to first find cures, right? And get to that point. But that's not where our job ends, right? There's this whole rest of the life where there's so many opportunities to make a difference with quality of life. And that's a big focus of my research and of a lot of research.
Like, everyone has an opportunity to do something.
Yes, that's an important gift. Absolutely.
And if I wouldn't have survived that because my parents not paying something and having the money to pay the thing, I wouldn't have my friends I have right now because I wouldn't have exist. I wouldn't have the friends that I have right now.
Yeah, that's really important. That's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
And they wouldn't have you,
Yeah.
which is also really hard to imagine.
And
I'm sure.
and if I didn't exist, my parents would be stuck with a daughter, and that's it.
Tell us how you feel. Tell us how you feel about your sister, Connor.
What would you bring to my sister?
In the sense of humor too.